We're counting down the top 10 hidden water dangers that change the way you see the Appalachian landscape. A creek can look clear from the bridge. A lake can look calm from the shore. Yet the ground beneath them can hide mechanics that flip the script in seconds. We are talking about billion-gallon spills that move like lava. We are talking about rivers that rise chest deep because a switch flipped miles away. And we are talking about chemistry that turns a swimming hole into a trap. The map says these places are just water and rock, but the records show they are engineered systems, chemical reactions, and geological drains. The danger is not always the storm you see, it is the pipe you don't see. It is the mine shaft sitting open underground. And it is the sediment that holds a grudge for decades. The number one spot goes to a phenomenon that paints thousands of miles of streams in a color that shouldn't be there. It rewrites the rules for geology and biology across the entire region. Fact number 10. The disappearing lake, Mountain Lake, in southwest Virginia, looks like a permanent fixture on the map. It sits high in the ridges, a rare natural basin in a region that doesn't usually hold them. Yet this lake has a plumbing problem that defies common sense. Records show it has drained intermittently since 2008, turning a full lake into drying mudflats. This isn't just evaporation. It's a bathtub with a loose plug. Evidence suggests the lake sits behind an ancient landslide dam. That dam looks solid, but it sits on top of a soluble limestone. That means the rock underneath is like a sponge full of holes. Water dissolves the rock over time, opening conduits that act like drains. When a conduit opens, the water drops fast. When sediment and clay plug the hole, the water fills back up. This creates a cycle where the lake switches between full and empty based on underground shifts. It gets crazier when you realize how rare this is. Sources describe Mountain Lake as one of only 3 natural mountain lakes in the southern Appalachians. The other 2 eventually dwindled into ponds. That scarcity shows just how hard it is for these mountains to hold water above ground. The rock wants to drain it, so when you see Mountain Lake full, you are looking at a temporary victory over gravity. It is still happening today as the lake continues to rise and fall with the shifting plumbing below. Fact number 9. The deceptive Blue Hole, Rock Island State Park in Tennessee, draws crowds with waterfalls and deep blue pools. The Blue Hole looks like the perfect spot to cool off on a hot southern day. But swimming and wading here are permanently closed for a reason that isn't visible from the bank. The danger is not just the depth. It is a machine-driven current tied to the TVA powerhouse nearby. Turbines pull water to generate electricity. That pull creates hydraulic suction underwater. It creates downdrafts that can drag a swimmer below the surface, even when the water looks completely calm on top. That is the trap. You don't see white water or crashing waves. You see a blue pool, yet the suction can be relentless. Reports describe boil lines where water churns from below. They also mention submerged siphons, which act like hidden drains between rocks. The gorge itself is a narrow canyon, which means there is no easy escape if the water surges. And it does surge. Sirens warn of sudden releases from the dam upstream, where levels can rise 20 feet in minutes. That is a wall of water as high as a house. The combination of hidden suction and sudden floods makes this one of the most technical hazards on the list. The closure remains in effect right now because the powerhouse and the canyon geometry haven't changed. Fact number 8. The ferry crossing. The Appalachian Trail stretches over 2,000 miles from Georgia to Maine. Hikers cross hundreds of creeks by hopping rocks or wading through shallow flow. Then they hit the Kennebec River in Maine, and the rules change. This is the only spot on the entire trail where wading is strictly forbidden. The official route puts you on a boat. That sounds like a luxury, but it is actually a safety guardrail. The river is about 70 yards wide, sometimes wider, and the current is swift. But the real threat sits upstream at Harris Dam, the largest hydroelectric facility in the state. The dam releases water to generate power or support rafting. These releases can raise the river level several feet in a matter of minutes. A hiker could start crossing in knee-deep water. By the time they reach the middle, the surge hits. The water turns into a moving wall that destroys footing and pushes you downstream. There is no warning time once you are in the flow. Records list fatalities from hikers who tried to ford the river anyway. The current is too strong and the change is too fast. The ferry runs during peak season to remove that gamble. It shows that even a wild trail has to yield to engineered water. The risk remains today as dam operations continue to control the river's pulse. Fact number 7. The silent fish. Kilbaloo's Lake in North Carolina covers nearly 4,000 acres. In the 1970s, it looked like a healthy reservoir, but beneath the surface, the food chain was collapsing. Wastewater from a power plant introduced selenium into the water. The levels in the water were small, around 20 parts per billion. That sounds like nothing. But biology acted as an amplifier. Plankton absorbed the selenium. Small fish ate the plankton. Big fish ate the small fish. The chemical built up in their bodies through bioaccumulation. By the early 1980s, reports indicate that 19 of the 20 fish species in the lake had disappeared. That is a 95% loss of diversity. The fish didn't just vanish. Reproduction failed. The survivors, like the tough mosquito fish, showed severe spinal deformities. Spines curved sideways or hunched over. The lake became a place where fish couldn't swim straight. Discharges stopped in 1986, but the recovery took decades. Selenium stays in the sediment and cycles back into the food web. It shows that clear water can still hide a toxic engine. The lesson remains relevant today as scientists track trace elements in reservoirs across the country. Fact number 6. The pipe failure. The Dan River spill in 2014 proved that retired does not mean safe. The power plant in Eden, North Carolina, had stopped burning coal, but it still held ash in a storage pond. The problem wasn't the dam wall. It was a drainage pipe running underneath the pond. That buried pipe collapsed. The ground around it washed out, and the pond found a new exit. About 39,000 tons of coal ash and 27 million gallons of wastewater surged into the river. That is enough liquid to fill 40 Olympic pools. The ash turned the river gray and traveled 70 miles downstream. What makes this wild is the cleanup math. Reports say workers only recovered about 10% of the spilled ash. The rest mixed with the river sediment. You can't just dredge the whole riverbed without destroying the ecosystem, so most of that ash stayed there. Tests showed arsenic levels in nearby groundwater spiked hundreds of times above the standard. It shows how a single rusted pipe can change a river system for years. The sediment remains mixed in the river bottom today. Fact number 5, the chemical leak. In 2014, the Elk River in West Virginia showed how fragile a water system really is. A storage tank at Freedom Industries leaked crude MCHM, a chemical used to clean coal. The tank was old and corroded, and the leak started quietly. But the location was the killer. The tank sat just upstream from the intake for a major water treatment plant. The chemical reached the intake in about an hour. By afternoon, the plant was overwhelmed. A do not use order went out to 300,000 people across 9 counties. This wasn't just don't drink. It was don't wash, don't cook, don't bathe. The chemical had a distinct licorice smell that clung to showers and sinks. For days, a regional capital shut down. Bottled water became the only currency that mattered. People reported rashes and nausea just from contact. It showed that a river is a pipeline, and if you contaminate the source, you contaminate the homes. The tank failure was small, about 10,000 gallons, but the placement was fatal for the system. This risk remains today wherever chemicals are stored near intakes. Fact number 4, the mine breakthrough. In October 2000, a coal slurry impoundment in Martin County, Kentucky, failed in a way that engineers fear most. It didn't spill over the top. The bottom fell out. The impoundment sat above abandoned underground mine workings. The barrier between the pond and the mine breached. Suddenly, 306 million gallons of thick, black sludge drained into the mine. It flowed through the tunnels and burst out into Coldwater Creek and Wolf Creek. The volume was staggering, over 20 times larger than the Exxon Valdez oil spill by volume in some comparisons. The sludge looked like black lava. It smothered stream beds and traveled over 100 miles downstream. This wasn't just a water spill. It was a solid mass of coal waste that choked aquatic life and blocked channels. Cleanup cost tens of millions, but you can't vacuum 100 miles of creek bottom perfectly. The connection between surface ponds and underground mines is a hidden hazard across the coal fields. The maps don't always show where the weak spots are. That geometry still exists under many sites today. Fact number 3, the billion-gallon spill. The Kingston fossil plant spill in 2008 rewrote the record books for volume. A dike holding fly ash failed at the Tennessee Valley Authority plant. This wasn't a leak, it was a collapse. About 1.1 billion gallons of ash slurry released in a massive wave. That is enough to fill 1,600 Olympic pools. It covered 300 acres of land in gray sludge. Houses were damaged, and the Emery and Clinch rivers were polluted. The cleanup took 6 years and cost over $1 billion. But the darkest part of the story came later. The ash contained heavy metals like arsenic, mercury, and hexavalent chromium. Workers who cleaned up the mess reported serious health issues, including cancers and respiratory diseases. Over 30 deaths were linked to the exposure in subsequent years. Lawsuits settled in 2023 highlighted the lack of proper safety gear for the crews. It shows that the disaster didn't end when the ash stopped moving. It continued in the lungs of the people who cleared it. The sheer scale makes it one of the largest environmental catastrophes in American history. Fact number 2, the hidden network. The single spills get the headlines, but the real story is the network. Across the Appalachian Basin, there are roughly 1,000 coal slurry impoundments. These engineered ponds hold billions of gallons of wastewater and fine coal particles. Here is the thing. About 94% of them are unlined. That means there is no barrier between the waste and the ground. Water seeps out. It enters the groundwater and creates plumes that can travel 30 to 40 miles underground. You can't see it from the road. You can't see it from the creek bank. But the chemistry is moving through the rock. The waste carries metals like lead, arsenic, and manganese. It puts private wells and springs at risk, miles away from the source. We also know what happens when they fail catastrophically. The Buffalo Creek disaster in 1972 released a wall of slurry that killed 125 people and wiped out communities. The risk is distributed across the entire region. The impoundments are still there, holding back gravity and chemistry right now. Fact number 1, acid mine drainage. The number 1 spot goes to the Orange Death. It is the most widespread water problem in the region. Over 10,000 kilometers of streams in Appalachia are stained bright orange. This isn't mud. It is rust formed by a chemical reaction that starts underground. When old coal mines are abandoned, they fill with water and air. The oxygen reacts with pyrite, fool's gold, in the rock. This creates sulfuric acid and dissolved iron. The acid drops the water pH to levels comparable to orange juice or vinegar. This acid water dissolves other metals like aluminum and lead from the rocks. When it hits the surface stream, the iron oxidizes and settles out as yellow boy, that slimy orange coating you see on rocks. It smothers the stream bottom, killing insects and suffocating fish eggs. The stream can look clear and fast-moving, but it is biologically dead. It is a chemical fire that burns slowly for decades. Bacteria even speed up the reaction. The scale is massive, covering a distance equal to driving across the country twice, and it is still happening today, flowing from mines that closed 50 years ago. These 10 entries show us that the landscape is active. It holds secrets in the rock, the pipes, and the mud. The water looks calm, but the forces underneath are constantly working. From the disappearing lake in Virginia to the billion-gallon flows in Tennessee, the map is deeper than it looks. Next time you cross a bridge or stand by a reservoir, remember what might be happening just out of sight. The ground is not always as solid as it feels,